Paul, you're Senior Lecturer in Computing and Communications. Can you tell me a little bit about your research area and research projects?
My research is really about understanding how people communicate and share information, and on the one hand from the theoretical point of view, so what is information, but also from a practical and computational point of view, so building models of how people actually communicate with computers.
So what got you into that particular area?
When I was still at secondary school, I wasn't aware of the fact that there is this area where you combine on the one hand computer science and on the other hand language. I was very lucky because apart from the sort of regular classes we had in maths, economics, etc., there was a class in culture and society, and the particular teacher that was teaching that had just read a book, actually this book, Gödel, Escher, Bach, and he was interested in teaching us a bit of logic, which is covered by that book. And so this book combines insights from the mathematician Gödel, the musician Bach, and also the visual artist Escher. And they are all in different ways dealing with information and how that information is about things which is outside, say, the language or the music or the visual modality.
Paul, it's a very thick book. Have you read it from cover to cover?
Yes, yeah,
I'm
over
well
many
impressed.
years. Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit more then about some of the research projects that you've been involved in?
Yes, so for instance, one of our projects was really focused on how you can make information that is stored in one particular format accessible, maybe by transforming it into another format. So for instance, there's a lot of text on the World Wide Web, in books, in various other medias, in leaflets, which is maybe not always in the format which is most suited for the audience in case. So what we did is we looked at developing a technology which takes the text and transforms it automatically into a dialogue script. So a script for two people, one typically an expert and one a layperson who asks questions about the topic. And so we implemented a system like that, and then through another project we got in touch with a charity who was interested in using that to take some of their leaflets for the disabled people. So they basically provide a service for disabled people with assisted living. And so they've got a whole range of leaflets to inform their service users about the services they provide. And they wanted to provide it also in a different format. And so we prepared for them from their leaflets these mini dialogues which describe the same information basically. And then we used some technology developed elsewhere off the shelf to turn that into little videos. It's a bit like us sitting here, but then to computer animated characters basically acting out a conversation about the content of that leaflet.
So you turned a monologue into a dialogue.
Into a dialogue, yeah.
And how was the dialogue received?
Separately from that particular bit of research, we did also what in the field is called an evaluation study with a separate set of users, where we looked indeed at how they perceive dialogue versus monologue. So we gave them bits of information in dialogue and in monologue form, some of them in dialogue, some in monologue form, and then we asked them to rate that. And what we really found is that it's not so much that everybody prefers dialogue or everybody prefers the monologue, the handwritten monologue, but it's more like you get sort of a partition where one set of people really likes the dialogue and the other half likes the monologue. And so from our point of view, that sort of suggests that it might be most beneficial if you can give people really a choice where they can choose themselves whether they want to learn about this information as a dialogue or read it up in the form of a monologue.
Yeah, and so if you're going to put it up on a website, then you're offering people the choice of whatever suits them the best.
Yes, yeah.
So is there something in particular that you've been working on recently that you're quite excited about?
Yeah, so actually building on the work we did on going from a whole text to a dialogue, another strand of research I've been working on with a number of other people is, well, what if we go from, even if it's just a single sentence, to a question about that sentence? And that could, for instance, be used in assessment or in revision for students, where they might want to revise the course materials and be asked questions about particular bits of that. So a while ago, we, together with the University of Memphis, we organized a competition where we had a number of teams build systems to do exactly this task. We set up a set of sentences and with each of them a question type, so that could be who, what, where. And the task for the system then would be to generate a well-formed question, so a question which is relevant to that text and which is also grammatically correct. The participants didn't see those input text and questions or question types, and so on the day of the competition we gave them those texts, and they then generated their outputs, and those were then independently rated on how good they actually were. And from that we learned a lot about where the state of the art of the field is and where we still can improve things. And so currently I'm working with research students, 2 research students who are looking at taking that information and, for instance, improving the questions that are generated by such a system by taking into account not just the single sentence, but also the text that comes before it and the text that comes after it.
That's the context.
The context, yes. Yeah.
I'm just curious about the systems that created these questions from the sentences. Were they all did they come up with very, very different questions?
They did, because they used quite different methods. So some of them, really what they did is they looked just for, say, a pattern in the input text. So what's the subject of the sentence, what's the verb, is this a person or is it a thing? So can I turn it into a who question maybe, change a few things around. Others, and this was actually one of the better performing systems, try to really analyze the content of the text and turn it into some kind of logical representation format. So where it's no longer in natural language at all, it's really in this format which is a bit like what's used in this book. And then on the basis of that they try to find out what kind of questions would fit with the underlying information and then generate a question. And so they did actually slightly better than the ones which were just looking at the surface text.
So that's your research. How does that then go on to feed into the teaching that you do at the Open University?
So at the OU we build course materials in teams, and so currently I'm involved in a team that's working on the next introduction to computing and information technology, and the idea is that we want to help our students to develop their problem solving skills, among many other things, in that course. And so to do that, we give them not only many examples of sort of problems that are solved and programming languages they can use, but we also we have a number of mini projects for them to actually do. And so there's one on science, so where they have to model a particular physical phenomena. Another one is on music, so where they we have colleagues who do research, cutting-edge research on music generation, and so they're going to build their own little music generator. And then there is one project which I'm working on, which is basically on dialogue. And in fact, what we are thinking of is the sort of system which you might be familiar with from your own mobile phone. So, for instance, you might have heard of Siri or Cortana or Google Now. So it is basically a personal assistant which can provide you with information on various different things, like where you are, where you want to go, what time of the year it is, etc. But what we want to offer the students is basically a project where they build their own application, which then helps them decide, for instance, what gardening activities they need to do right now. So, for instance, whether they need to prune their plum tree or not, whether they should have done that last month.
Pruning your plum tree app would be fantastic for me, because I've got several of them in my garden. Paul, that's been really interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.